My mom said I'd never amount to anything. Now I'm the CEO my golden sister reports to, and she still doesn't know I own the company. I was 12 the first time my mother told me I was a mistake. She didn't shout it. She didn't even sound angry, just indifferent. Like she was stating the weather. You were just unexpected, she said, sipping her coffee, flipping through the paper. I was done after Amanda. Then you happened. She said it with a shrug, like I was a missed appointment or a traffic ticket. Amanda, of course, was the daughter she wanted, the one she planned, the one she dressed in lace and bragged about to her friends. Amanda won spelling bees, starred in school plays, made honor roll. She knew how to be seen. And I learned early how to disappear. It wasn't that I didn't try, God, I tried. I colored inside the lines. I brushed my hair like Amanda's. I helped with dishes, brought home B+ grades, sometimes A's. But it was never enough. Because Amanda was always better. She just has that sparkle, Mom would say, watching her rehearse cheer routines in the living room. She's got a real future. Once I came home beaming with a small art award. Mom glanced at it and said, "That's nice, honey. Hey Amanda, did your coach confirm the regional tryouts yet?" That's the moment I stopped trying to be seen. My dad was around, quiet, kind in a distant sort of way. But Mom ran the house, and her affection was currency. Amanda had it in abundance. I lived on scraps. I wasn't abused. I wasn't starved. But if you've never been the child, no one roots for you, won't understand how loud silence can be. How you start to expect nothing and still feel the sting of being overlooked. I left home at 17. No big fight. No dramatic exit. Just a suitcase and a quiet bus ride out of state after saving up from my part-time grocery job. Mom didn't stop me. She just asked if I'd be wiring my portion of the rent. Amanda hugged me like I was a classmate going abroad. Not a sister. Not someone whose bed she used to sneak into during thunderstorms. The truth is, no one ever came looking. But that's okay. Because I didn't leave to be found. I left to build something no one thought I could. I worked odd jobs, waitressing, stocking shelves, freelance design, slept in tiny apartments, shared spaces with strangers. I built a website on a beat-up laptop using cafe Wi-Fi I couldn't afford to buy coffee for. I read, I studied, I taught myself marketing, branding, digital storytelling. I failed. I cried. A lot. But no one was watching, so no one judged. And little by little I got better. I launched a freelance business, then a consulting firm, then quietly a full-service marketing agency. No press, no spotlight, just results. Clients didn't care where I went to school. They cared that I delivered, that I understood people, that I made their brands grow. Within 5 years, I had 15 employees. By year 7, we moved into a glass-walled office on the 17th floor of a downtown building. And the best part, my mother had no idea. Amanda had no idea. They hadn't reached out in over a decade, and I hadn't given them a reason to, until fate stepped in. One Monday morning, I walked into the office early, coffee in hand, scrolling through applications for a new executive assistant. I wasn't supposed to be involved in hiring, but sometimes I liked to see who was knocking. And then I saw it. Her name, Amanda L. Carrington. I froze. At first I thought it had to be someone else, but the degree matched, the resume, the timeline, the bullet points. It was her, Amanda, applying for a job at my company. And the best part, she didn't know. She had no idea that the R in RLM group stood for Rachel. No clue that the little sister she'd forgotten had built an empire from scratch. And now the golden daughter was asking to be my assistant. I didn't forward the file. I didn't flag it. I just sat there, staring at the screen, letting it all sink in. This wasn't a scheme. I hadn't planned any of this. This wasn't revenge. It was fate. And I intended to let it unfold slowly, beautifully, painfully. Because for once I didn't have to raise my voice to be heard. All I had to do was open the door. She walked in 10 minutes early. Of course she did. Amanda had always been punctual, polished, perfect. Even now jobless, desperate. She moved like someone who still expected doors to open before she knocked. Her hair was shorter than I remembered, sleek, professional. Not the golden curls she used to toss around like a crown. Her makeup was flawless, her blazer crisp. Her heels made no sound as she entered the reception area. I stood behind the tinted glass of my office and watched, not hiding, just observing. She looked smaller than I remembered, not physically, just dented. Like someone who had finally learned that charisma doesn't pay the rent forever. She didn't see me. Why would she? To her, I was still 17, slipping out of that house like a shadow. She hadn't seen me in over a decade, and even then I'm not sure she ever really looked. So now there she sat, polite, composed, clutching a leather folder like it was a parachute, and she had no idea that her next interview would be with the same sister she once pitied, dismissed, and forgot. I didn't plan this. HR scheduled the final interviews. She was assigned to meet with 2 department heads, and due to a last-minute conflict with the CEO, me. They didn't know Amanda was my sister. She'd left out her middle name. The resume gave nothing away. I almost missed it, but I didn't. I opened the calendar, saw her name, took a breath, and said nothing. At 10:55, my assistant knocked gently. "Your 1100 is here, Amanda Carrington." I nodded. "Send her in." My office was quiet. Minimalist, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the skyline behind me. I sat at my desk, calm, fingers steepled. Amanda stepped in, and didn't flinch, not even a blink. "Hi, I'm Amanda," she said brightly, extending her hand. I stood and shook it firmly. "Nice to meet you," I said steady. She sat, crossed her legs, smiled. She didn't recognize me, not the voice, not the face, not the nameplate on the desk that read R.L. Monroe. Of course she didn't. In her world I had disappeared, and she never once asked where I'd gone. "Thank you for making time," she said. "I've really admired the company's growth, especially in the last few years." That was a lie, but a polished one. I'm happy to hear that, I replied. "Let's get into it." I kept it formal, detached, clinical. She responded like she always had, polished, persuasive, practiced. "I'm ready for a new challenge. I believe in building relationships. I'm not afraid to roll up my sleeves. All the right things, none of them mattered." Because I wasn't testing her resume, I was watching something else, her eyes, her posture. The hesitation when I asked, "What would your last team say was your weakness?" She paused, smiled thin. I used to be too focused on results. Sometimes I forgot to ask for help. I almost laughed. Amanda never asked for help. She expected it, demanded it, assumed the world would rearrange itself for her. But now, she was learning to package need as humility. I let the silence stretch, then stood, walked to the window. The city stretched wide behind me, steel and sky and stories. "Have you ever worked directly with a CEO before?" I asked, eyes on the horizon. She shifted slightly. "Not directly, no, but I've supported VPs and senior partners." "Think you can handle the pace?" I asked. "I thrive under pressure," she said. She sounded like she meant it. I turned, met her eyes. Still nothing, not a flicker. Just a hopeful applicant interviewing for a job beneath her old pay grade, trying to keep her pride intact. I walked back to my desk. "Thank you, Amanda," I said as I sat. "We'll be in touch soon." She nodded, stood. Her smile faltered just slightly. Maybe she expected warmth. Maybe she wasn't used to being treated like everyone else. "Thanks again," she said. "I really appreciate the opportunity." And then she left. No second glance, no hesitation, no idea. When the door clicked shut, I exhaled. She didn't know, not yet. But tomorrow she'd receive an offer letter, an invitation to step into a role she never imagined she'd take, executive assistant to the CEO of the company she thought was just another stepping stone. The company I built, with no help, no praise, no family cheering me on. I didn't plan this, but I wasn't stopping it. Because some stories don't need revenge. They just need a spotlight. And this time, I was holding the light. Amanda showed up at 8:58 a.m. sharp. Hair neatly pulled back, notebook and hand nerves, tucked behind a practiced smile. I was already at my desk. I always am. The morning sun sliced across my office, warming the glass table, but leaving my face half in shadow, just the way I like it. That silence before the noise of meetings, calls, and decisions. It's sacred. I heard her heels before I saw her. Then a soft knock. My assistant opened the door slightly. "She's here." I nodded. "Send her in." Amanda stepped through, bright smile in place until she saw me and froze. There it was. The recognition, that flicker of disbelief across her face like a brief power outage. I didn't say a word, just met her eyes calm, unreadable. She stood still for 3 full seconds before recovering. "Good morning," she said, steady voice, too steady, like someone pretending nothing's burning behind her. "Morning," I replied. "Let's go over your responsibilities. No mention of the past. No reunion, no family. Just business." I motioned for her to sit. She did carefully, like the chair might vanish beneath her. "I assume HR walked you through the basics," I began. "Your calendar is synced. You'll manage my meetings, prep client decks, and handle high-level correspondence. If I'm not in the room, you're the filter." She nodded, eyes on her notebook, though she hadn't written a thing. "Yes, of course." I let the silence stretch a little, then added slowly, "This role requires discretion. You'll be working closely with me. I expect clarity, speed, and no assumptions." She blinked, then asked softly, "You built all this?" I didn't smile. "Yes." Her lips parted like she wanted to ask how, or when, or maybe why she hadn't known. But I didn't offer more. Instead, I stood and walked to the window. Behind me, I heard her shift again. "You changed your name," she said. Not accusing, just processing. "I use my middle name professionally," I replied without turning. "Technically true. Rachel Lynn Monroe. Same me. Different story." I turned back toward her. "You'll start by sitting in on this morning's executive meeting. Take notes. No speaking. Just observe." She nodded. The meeting started at 9:30. We walked to the boardroom side by side. People greeted me with respect. Amanda got the kind of neutral glance reserved for interns or temps. She kept quiet. I did too. And in that silence, the new hierarchy took shape. For the first time in her life, Amanda wasn't the center of the room. She was the assistant. To me. She didn't interrupt, didn't perform, just scribbled notes in that leather-bound notebook like her life depended on it. After the meeting, I handed her 3 folders. "Client summaries. Study them. We have presentations next week. I expect you to know the background." "Yes," she said quickly. "Of course." I didn't respond. I just walked away. Back in my office, I closed the door and finally exhaled. There she was, taking notes, looking up to me. It was so perfect it almost felt scripted. But I didn't gloat, didn't smile, because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about exposure, about letting the roles reverse naturally, without force, without drama. Letting her feel what it's like to be the one expected to be perfect and ignored when she's not. I gave her what she never gave me: professionalism, neutrality, silence. Because sometimes silence is the sharpest sound in the room. That afternoon, I watched from across the office as she carried documents between departments. She didn't strut like she used to. She walked with purpose, like someone trying to earn her place. At 4:00 p.m., she returned to my office, placed the client summaries on my desk, neatly annotated and highlighted. "No words." "Good," I said, flipping through the pages. She hovered for a second too long, then said it. "Rachel, I didn't know." I looked up steady. "I know." She waited. For what forgiveness, connection, closure, I gave her none. Only one line. "Close the door on your way out." And she did. By week 2, Amanda started staying late. Not because I asked her to, but because I didn't. There's a silence that follows people who were once celebrated everywhere they went. A silence that whispers, "You are not the exception here." Amanda was starting to understand what it felt like to be ordinary. She arrived early, left after everyone else, checked her inbox like praise might be hiding in it. But I didn't treat her unfairly. I gave her tasks, clear expectations, honest feedback. She made mistakes. I corrected them, like any boss would. She spilled coffee on a draft contract once. I didn't yell. I just handed her another copy and said, "Print again." That was it. She looked at me, waiting for anger, something she could twist into cruelty, something to prove I was bitter. But I wasn't. I was professional, and it was killing her. One afternoon, she walked into my office without knocking, something I usually don't tolerate, but I let it slide. I wanted to see what she'd do. "Hey, do you have a minute?" I looked up. "Yes." She hesitated, hand still on the knob. "I just wanted to say, I appreciate you giving me this chance. I know you didn't have to." I tilted my head. "No," I said. "I didn't." That hit harder than anything else I could have said. She nodded slowly. "I'm doing my best. I know, I replied. So is everyone else. She didn't speak again, just turned and left. The door clicked softly behind her. I wasn't cruel, but I wasn't here to heal her either. She'd spent years being applauded for simply existing. Now she had to learn how to perform. Without applause. That Friday, I assigned her a client presentation deck. She wasn't presenting, just prepping. She sent it at 10 p.m. I reviewed it the next morning. It was fine, safe, pretty in that overly templated way that screams I followed the guide, nothing more. I marked a dozen comments and sent it back. She replied within minutes, on it. By Monday, the revisions were done. And better, cleaner. I forwarded the final version to the client myself. The email was short. See attached. Confirm by end of day. No credit given. She saw the message. I know because she opened it within 30 seconds. But I didn't owe her validation. This wasn't school. This was business. And she wasn't used to that. She wasn't used to working for approval, to sitting on the outside while others pitched closed, won. And slowly, it started to show. The third week, she forgot to send the updated agenda for a board call. Not a crisis, just a hiccup. I covered it without fuss, but afterward I called her into my office. Double-check your links before sending, I said. That mistake made us look unprepared. She nodded, biting her lip. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I'm not questioning your intent, I interrupted. I'm correcting your execution. She froze. That was the difference. I wasn't treating her like a sister. I was managing her like an employee. And that stripped away every weapon she used to rely on. She couldn't guilt me, couldn't charm or twist her way out, because she wasn't dealing with her little sister anymore. She was dealing with her boss. Later that evening, I found her alone in the break room, staring out the floor-to-ceiling windows with a paper cup in her hands. She didn't see me, didn't hear me. She was just standing there, quiet, still, like someone trying to remember what it felt like to be chosen. And maybe that was the point. For once in her life, Amanda wasn't the one being picked. She was just trying not to be left behind. The call came on a Tuesday morning, blocked number. I almost didn't pick up. But something in me already knew. Hello, I answered, eyes still on my screen. There was a pause. Then her voice, sharp, familiar, soaked in that old controlled disapproval. Rachel. Just that. Like a summons. Like I was 12 again and had forgotten to clear the dinner table. I didn't respond. She continued. I just heard from Amanda, she said. She says you're her boss now. Another pause. And that you've been unkind. I leaned back in my chair. Unkind. That word sat heavy. Not because it was true, but because it was laughable coming from her. She who never once asked how I survived after I left. Never wondered if I had food, shelter, or anything left in me to keep going. Now she wanted kindness. She's your sister, Rachel, my mother continued. You two should support each other. And there it was, the subtle accusation. The unspoken belief that I was the problem. That Amanda was still the one worth defending. I finally spoke. I'm running a business, I said, calm and clear. Amanda applied. HR hired her. She's being treated like any employee. She's not any employee, my mother snapped. She's family. I laughed, soft, humorless. No, Mom. She's only family when it benefits her. Or you, she bristled. I didn't need to see her to feel it. That's not fair. Fair. As if fairness ever existed in our household. As if fairness explained why Amanda got ballet lessons while I wore secondhand shoes. Why Amanda got a car at 16. And I got silence when I asked for help with textbooks. Do you even remember my graduation, I asked. Did you notice you never came? She didn't answer, so I kept going. You were too busy organizing Amanda's engagement party. It was the same week. Remember, more silence. Then you always exaggerate, Rachel. You've always been so sensitive. There it was. The classic dismissal. Not remorse, not recognition. Just a quiet way of saying you're the problem. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I didn't ask to be seen. I simply said, you don't get to ask for grace now after refusing to give it for 25 years. She paused. Then came the next weapon, whispered. Meant to cut, you're being cruel. I exhaled. No, Mom. I'm being neutral. It just feels like cruelty. When you're used to privilege. Silence again. And then something shifted. A hesitation. Like she finally realized she couldn't control this version of the story anymore. You know, she said slowly, I always worried you'd grow bitter. I smiled but kept it to myself. No, Mom, I grew successful. That's the part you never expected. Click. I ended the call. Not out of anger, but peace. She wouldn't understand. Not today, maybe not ever, but that wasn't my burden to carry anymore. Later that day, Amanda knocked softly on my door. She looked subdued. Like she already knew. Maybe Mom had called her too. Maybe she cried. Maybe she begged Amanda to fix it. To fix me. I didn't ask. Amanda opened her mouth like she wanted to say something. I didn't let her. I've already approved your leave request for Friday, I said. Eyes still on my screen. Take the time. Reset. Come back Monday prepared. She nodded. Then quietly, did she call you? I looked up. Does it matter she didn't answer? Because she already knew. She left the room. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the daughter trying to win anyone's approval. I was the one in charge. Not out of revenge. Not to punish. But to remind them I didn't need to scream to be heard. I just had to stop whispering. It was the Reynolds pitch. A 6-figure project. 4 weeks of prep. A client that could double our Q3 revenue. We'd spent days refining it, deck layouts, brand tone, projected ROI. Amanda had one job. Just one. Send the final presentation to the client 24 hours in advance. Confirm receipt. Lock in the meeting. Follow up if needed. Basic protocol. But I knew something was wrong the moment I walked into Monday's briefing. My director looked pale. Reynolds just emailed, she said. They never received our pitch. I paused. They what? She turned her laptop toward me. The message was short, blunt. No file received. We assume you're not prepared. Terminating discussion. My jaw didn't clench from rage. It clenched from calculation. I scanned the calendar. The invite had been sent. But no attachment. Amanda's follow-up never sent. I closed my eyes. 3 seconds. Then call them. Say it was a system error. Offer to present live this afternoon. I'll be in the room. The director nodded and left. I didn't call Amanda. I waited. I wanted to see what she'd do first. At 10:17, she knocked on my door. Eyes wide, hands clenched. I just heard, she said. I looked up slowly. You didn't check the file before sending. I thought I did, she stammered. I had it open. I meant to drag it in, but you didn't. She opened her mouth again, then closed it. I let the silence hang, then added. You also didn't confirm with the client. No follow-up, no check-in. Her cheeks flushed. I didn't think I had to with them. They'd always been responsive. I leaned back. And when you assume Amanda, you cost people. She froze. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't humiliate her in front of the team. I just stated the facts. That was enough. I pulled up the workflow tracker, pointed to the timeline. See that, I said. That's the chain of deliverables tied to your confirmation. Finance, creative, analytics, all waiting on your one step. She looked at the screen like it might swallow her whole. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know. Then I said something that made her flinch harder than any reprimand. If it had been anyone else, you would have demanded they be written up. She looked at me wounded. I didn't mean you didn't follow protocol. You didn't double-check. You didn't communicate. You didn't mean to fail, but you did. I stood up, calm, cold, fair. The only reason Reynolds is still talking to us is because I fixed it. She didn't argue, because she couldn't. The weight was sinking in. Not just the mistake, but the irony. Because years ago, if I had made that kind of misstep, Amanda would have told everyone I was careless, that I wasn't built for this world. And now she was the one making the kind of error that gets people fired. And she was standing across from the one person who wouldn't fire her, but wouldn't protect her either. I let the silence stretch, then said, You're on leave for the rest of the week, unpaid. Her eyes widened. Rachel. This isn't personal, I said. It's standard. She nodded. Slowly. Took one step back, then another. Okay, she whispered. I understand. She turned to leave, then stopped in the doorway. I used to think you were just cold, she said. But now I realize you're just not afraid to be alone. I didn't answer, because I wasn't. Amanda returned the following Monday. She wasn't wearing heels, just flat, simple black, unassuming. Her hair was pulled back, not styled. No statement necklace, no bold lipstick. She looked human. She greeted the front desk like a new hire, didn't expect anyone to recognize her name, didn't expect a smile. At 9:01, she knocked on my door. Not early, not late. "May I come in?" I looked up from my laptop and gestured toward the chair across from me. She sat gently, folding her hands in her lap. Not like someone ready to defend herself, more like someone prepared to be sentenced and accept it. "I wanted to speak to you before jumping back in," she began. I said nothing. I wanted to hear what she thought mattered. "I know what I did last week. Wasn't just a mistake," she continued. "It was careless. It was avoidable. And, if I'm honest, I think part of me still believed I was above making those kinds of errors. That I believed. I've always moved through jobs expecting people to catch me when I slipped," she admitted. "Bosses, coworkers, even you back when we were younger. And when they didn't, I blamed them. I didn't move. Not because I wasn't listening, because I had waited over a decade to hear her speak like this." And she said, voice quieter now, "I owe you an apology. Not just for last week. For all of it." A long silence followed. The kind of silence that could stretch across years. She searched my face, maybe hoping for something, warmth, forgiveness, a crack in the wall I'd built. But I stayed still, because I didn't come this far to crumble at a few carefully chosen words. "You know," I said finally, "it's funny," she blinked. "What is you used to tell people I was too soft, too sensitive, that I didn't have what it took to lead." She swallowed. "I remember." I leaned forward, resting my elbows lightly on the desk. "And now you're sitting across from me, apologizing for being blind, expecting a version of me that doesn't exist anymore." She nodded, said nothing. "I'm not angry, Amanda," I said, voice flat. "I stopped being angry years ago, the day I realized no one was coming to save me. Not you, not Mom, especially not Mom." She flinched. "I saw it, but I wasn't done. I built something out of the silence you left me in. And now, for the first time in your life, you're hearing what silence really sounds like." Amanda's eyes welled, but no tears fell, because even she knew crying wouldn't change anything. "I don't want pity," she said, "or a hug. I just wanted you to know I see it now. Everything I didn't see before." I nodded once. "That was enough." "I'm not going to fire you," I said. She looked surprised. "But I'm not going to fix you either," I added. "That's your work now." She exhaled a shaky breath. Not relief, just acceptance. "Okay." I walked to the door and opened it. "Meeting over." As she stepped out, I said one last thing. "From this point forward, you'll report directly to the operations director. Your role remains the same, but I won't be managing you personally." She turned. "Why?" "Because I'm not here to rewrite our childhood," I said. "I'm here to protect my company, and that requires distance." She nodded, didn't argue, didn't beg, just walked away. And for the first time since we were little girls, I think she finally understood who I was. Not the sister she left behind, not the backup plan, not the failure, but the one who built everything she took for granted and then walked away without asking for thanks. A few months ago, I walked past the cafe my mother used to take us to as kids. It had been closed for years, just an empty shell now. The windows were dusty, the sign faded. But I stopped anyway. Stood there for a long time, watching my own reflection flicker against the glass. Behind it, I could almost smell the rosemary bread again. Hear Amanda laughing too loudly at a joke that wasn't funny. See my mother nodding along, not because she found it charming, but because she expected everyone else to. Back then, I thought if I was quiet enough, good enough, invisible enough, maybe I'd finally be seen. I thought the dream was to be invited to sit at the table. Now I know the real power is owning the building the table is in. People still ask if I ever confronted Amanda one last time. If I told her everything, demanded she admit what she did. But I didn't. Because I've learned something sometimes, the most powerful revenge is silence. Let them wonder how I did it. Let them replay every moment where they underestimated me. Let them live in the shadow of a woman they never thought would matter. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I didn't beg them to believe in me. I just became the version of myself they never imagined and left them to deal with the truth. Amanda still works at the company. She's quiet now, steady, capable. I rarely see her, but when I do, we exchange small nods. Nothing more. Some people think that's sad, that two sisters could be in the same building and barely speak. But to me, that is closure. I don't need her to apologize again. I don't need her to say you were right, I was wrong. I know who I am now, and for once I'm not asking for a seat. I'm setting the table. Some nights I leave the office after 10. The building's quiet. The city hums below. I walk to my car alone, no fanfare, no applause. Just the sound of my own heels on the pavement. And that's enough, because I didn't just survive what they did. I outgrew it. And that is the last word I never said.